Right, let's get up. Beirut to Arish, second attempt. I'm not messing around here. Let's go, Sylvia. Let's get out of here. Let's go, go, go. South, south, south. Out, out, out. There we go. So far, so good. A nice straight line down the coast for a while. Well, last week was a nightmare. Whole journey I've been paranoid that people are after me, particularly since I accepted those rings from Paula in Bologna a few weeks ago. I was worried about hidden cameras in my Tirana hotel room, and I diverted from Damascus because I was worried about meeting a heavy greeting party, but so far I haven't been checking Sylvia for stowaways. Last week I jumped in here, ready to take off, but I couldn't get the normally reliable Sylvia to start. I spotted that both fuel tanks were empty. I was about to go outside to check for leaks or severed pipes when suddenly there was this guy behind me. He grabbed me, whacked me over the back of the head with something, tied me up and gagged me. I think he was trying to kidnap me and take Sylvia, but he hadn't realised that Sylvia had no fuel, which means that somebody else, not him, must have already stolen the fuel. So the kidnapper got about as far towards takeoff as I did, which was nowhere. Once he realised he wasn't going to get anywhere, he grabbed the jar of sweets that Abdul's mum had asked me to take to him in Sharm el-Sheikh. He stuffed them into his jacket and he ran off across the airfield. Eventually, I don't know how long it was, but eventually someone from the airport team came over to investigate why Sylvia hadn't moved off her stand. He spotted me tied up in the back, released me, called the police and gave me a mug of sweet tea. I gave two very sceptical police officers a statement, and then they started asking me questions. When they asked what had been stolen, I asked to look over Sylvia. I didn't call her Sylvia. The officers didn't seem the sentimental sort. As far as I could tell, the only thing the guy had got away with was my dignity and that tin of sweets. Or the tin with what I thought were sweets inside. I didn't mention my dignity because that couldn't be recovered, and I didn't mention the sweets because either they were too trivial to worry about or too serious to want the police to worry about them. So I just explained about the fuel, and the police came to the same conclusion as I had, that this was a separate crime. I asked if it was a regular thing at the airport, the stealing of fuel from aeroplanes. They said they asked the questions. That seemed unnecessarily evasive to me. My story was that I was just another of those British tourist adventurers who wanders into trouble through overconfidence in themselves, the basic reasonableness of humanity, and the power of the British passport. His Britannic Majesty's Secretary of State requests and requires, in the name of His Majesty, all those whom it may concern to allow the bearer to pass freely without let or hindrance, and to afford the bearer such assistance and protection as may be necessary. Well, actually, as it turned out, I did need some protection, but there wasn't any to hand. The King, he doesn't have a passport. Passports are issued in his name, so he doesn't really need one. He just needs to say, "I am His Britannic Majesty, let me through, give me some protection," or something like that. Anyway, I said, I'm an adventurer, exploring on my own, on this plane as a hobby. I made out that I'm the airborne equivalent of those retired sailors who sail too close to Somali pirates, or cyclists who pedal across Afghanistan and get themselves into trouble. I made out I'm the equivalent of them, but who am I kidding? I am them. And it feels like I'm either flying into trouble, or trouble is quite close behind me. When the police asked if I wanted to speak with the British Embassy, I circled back to the fuel being stolen and started making a fuss about that. They called in someone from the airport. I made more of a fuss about the security of my plane and other people's planes, and eventually the airport said they'd refill Sylvia for me. They didn't call her Sylvia. Well, they don't know that's her name. I was pretty proud of the outcome. And when they asked if I needed to go to a hospital, I felt a tingle of excitement, saying, "Don't worry, I've got my own doctor." They let me go, and I set off back to Miriam's, feeling happy about seeing her again, but worried about what might happen on a second visit. Sitting in a jammed and lurching minibus edging back to the centre of Beirut, I dwelt ruefully on my cut head, my cricked neck, my bruised leg, the vulnerable petrol tanks, and a lot of unanswered questions. Have I been a sucker? Am I the victim of an elaborate long con? Are the rings a MacGuffin, a masking agent, a dazzle, to distract me from the jar of sweets which, far from being an incidental detail in my adventure, are the whole deal, high-value illicit goods of some kind for which I have somehow become the unwitting mule? I mean, if this is the case, then perhaps I've been lucky. If my potential kidnapper had left them behind, maybe the police would have found them, and by now I'd be in serious trouble in a Beirut prison. What is in that tin? Did Abdul's mother know what she was giving me? Human League are most famous for their multi-platinum million-selling album Dare and the hit singles that came from it. 3.5 years later, after interminable remixes, they finally released a new album of original material. Perhaps determined to not repeat themselves and to move on from relationship and waitressing dramas, they decided to address the civil war which was raging in Lebanon at the time in a song called The Lebanon. And who will have won when the soldiers have gone from the Lebanon? Genius. Everyone agreed that this earnest attempt at social commentary was a significant move on from Love Action, open brackets, I believe in love, close brackets. An extremely generous observer might suggest that this bold assertion that pop music should address global political events prepared the way perhaps for Band-Aid, which would follow 6 months later. Despite its expansion of the Human League's musical style, most people, however, thought it was wildly misjudged. The Lebanese civil war, which had already been raging for nearly 9 years, couldn't easily be discussed in a simple 2-verse, 2-chorus song structure. The war was a complicated mixture of religious, political and regional conflicts between Christian, Muslim, left-wing groups and Palestinian forces based in Lebanon. Then Syria and Israel got involved, Beirut became divided by the Green Line, and the conflict raged on until 1990. And fighting still goes on, and on, and on. One of the many ways in which Human League song was deemed to miss the mark was by repeatedly referring to Lebanon as the Lebanon. And in this respect I have some sympathy with Phil Oakey, which isn't a position I'm often in. But it is a trap I've fallen into in the past. Like most people in the English-speaking world, I had to learn that Ukraine is just Ukraine. The definite article, the, if you like, suggests a region and not a state. This is a particularly painful connotation if the state being referred to was once subjugated by a colonial power, as Ukraine was within the Soviet Union. Though incorrect, there is an understandable grammatical inclination to refer to Maldives as the Maldives because it's a chain of 26 atolls. Similarly, Philippines comprises an archipelago of 7,641 islands, so it's very tempting to add a the in there as well. Confusingly, the Bahamas is the Bahamas, not Bahamas. I'm not sure why. The name's meaning or origin often prompts the. Ukraine derives from an old East Slavic word meaning borderland, so the borderland sounds sensible. Netherlands translates as Low Countries, so the Netherlands has a solid logic. Though of course logic has its limits. In English we don't use the when we refer to places, but we do when we refer to rivers. Why does the Thames flow through London rather than Thames flow through the London? The Gambia is a small West African country. Its territory is narrowly drawn either side of the Gambia River, which is why it joins the Bahamas as one of only 2 countries that officially require a the at the start. For humans, it's the opposite of countries. If Phil Oakey is denigrating Lebanon by calling it the Lebanon, he'd be elevating me by calling me the Reggie. I can't remember how, but I once played pool in a Camden pub with Matt Johnson. Well, he played. I occasionally went to the table, eyed up a shot and missed. I was too starstruck to ask him why he called his band the. It seemed like something he would not have deigned to answer. Suppose a good the tribute band could be called the, and if that band ever got their own tribute band, they would be called the. The Permanent Committee on Geographical Names was established after World War One. There have been complaints about confusions arising from various forms and spellings of foreign place names. They don't give places their names, they just try to agree and promote standardised English versions of existing names. Committee members come from the Foreign Office, Ordnance Survey, the Hydrographic Office, BBC Monitoring, and the Royal Geographic Society and the Royal Scottish Geographic Society. Before this committee, the translation and standardisation of place names was undertaken on a rather ad hoc basis by the Royal Geographic Society. Apparently a breaking point came after an extended session trying to agree on what to call a coastal town in Namibia. Let's go down and have a look at Tyra. Steady, sorry, Sylvia. There it is, down there. Like so many other places around here, Tyra is an old city. It's birthplace of Dido, who in 814 BC founded Carthage and in 1999 released the multi-platinum award-winning album No Angel. Unfortunately, her brother Pygmalion of Tyre fell in love with a sculpture he'd created, which is why in George Bernard Shaw's play, in which a professor of phonetics teaches a flower seller to pass as a member of the upper classes and in the process falls in love with her, is called Pygmalion. 44 years later, Lerner and Lowe thought My Fair Lady was a better title for their musical adaptation of Pygmalion than Pygmalion, and 8 years later the film producers agreed. Dido's brother, Roland Constantine O'Malley Armstrong, is a highly successful producer and founder member of the band Faithless. None of whose work I could identify if asked, but whose work I instantly recognise on the dance floor. I like to dance. I didn't used to, but since growing more mature, I do. Part of the genius of Madness was that they were a band that boys instinctively knew how to dance to. We could all run on the spot and act nutty. Dido Florian Cloud de Bonneville O'Malley Armstrong is more difficult to dance to than her brother's Faithless, and is not at all nutty, at least in the teenage boy sense. When Sarah was little and into dance, she and I worked up a routine to Beyonce's Halo. Well, it wasn't really a routine, just a vocabulary of moves that we improvised around. They mostly took advantage of the fact that she was small enough to throw around. We enjoyed it, made Izzy laugh, and sometimes it made Izzy cry. Although probably that was more thanks to Beyonce than the two of us. Luke, he was never in the room. He was upstairs reading or making something out of Lego. Sarah was a great dancer. Her sense of rhythm was strong, her style was easy and relaxed, and she had a great smile. She radiated joy. When she was 5 or 6, she was in her first dance show on a proper stage. She was performing as the Wind with a bunch of other tiny kids. Essentially, they were just running around, flapping their arms. like the wind does. But even then she shone. She beamed. She was the ray of sunshine, as Izzy said. She made us happy when the skies were grey. She never knew, dear, how much we loved her. Why have they taken our sunshine away? Jaffa oranges were developed by Arab farmers in the 19th century. They're recognisable for having very few pips, a great sweet taste that lasts a long time after they've been picked, and a tough skin. These last two features make them very suitable for export. Jaffa is a port town on the southern edge of Tel Aviv, a bit further down the coast from here. We're heading inland now, though. The high quality of the Jaffa orange is probably why cricket uses it to describe a particularly well-bowled ball. Oh, what a Jaffa! Of course, this is ironic, because if it were actually a Jaffa, well, that would be a terrible ball. It would barely bounce, wouldn't travel as fast. There's no seam, so you wouldn't be able to get it to swing in the air or spin or nip back. But the upsides of actually bowling a Jaffa would be that it would be tough to hit for a six, and the sheer surprise might catch the batter unawares. Could also, I suppose, be used for refreshment at tea. The Jaffa isn't the only fruit-based cricketing term. The gleaming red new ball is often described as a cherry, and miraculously, the cherry sometimes transformed into a Jaffa as it leaves the hand and flies through the air. I've heard that in Northern Ireland, Jaffa can be used as a derogatory term for a Protestant. Protestants' historic allegiance to William of Orange leads them to be called Orangemen. William of Orange wasn't Orange or an Orange man. He was Prince of Orange, or possibly Orange, which is a town, and once a principality, in the south of France, near Avignon. Although he was Prince of Orange, he was born and lived in the Dutch Republic. Orange is the royal colour of Netherlands, or the Netherlands, which is why their sports teams and fans traditionally wear this colour rather than the red, white or blue of their national flag. This is the same reason why Italian sports teams wear blue rather than red, white or green. Apparently, back to Jaffa oranges, Idi Amin was partial to a Jaffa, apparently, although I'm not sure if he played cricket. William of Orange was a Dutch Protestant prince. He fought against the Catholic powers of Europe, particularly France, and was part of the long Dutch struggle against Spanish rule. In 1688 he was invited to invade England and overthrow the Catholic James II. William landed with an army, James fled, and the following year William and his wife Mary became joint monarchs. William III and Mary II. A glorious revolution. The royal couple didn't have any children, which suggests that William, as well as being an orange, might have been a man who can't impregnate a woman. A Jaffa. The baker Robert Witty, though, he had 2 sons and 2 daughters. He opened his first shop in Edinburgh in 1830, and in 1927 the firm he founded made their first Jaffa cake. A Jaffa cake is not a luxury biscuit. In the UK, value-added tax is only charged on luxury goods. Food is an essential good and so not considered luxury. This includes all cakes and all except luxury biscuits. A luxury biscuit is a biscuit covered in chocolate. For example, digestive, non-luxury; chocolate digestive, luxury; hobnob, non-luxury; chocolate hobnob, luxury. You get the idea. In 1991, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs changed its opinion about the Jaffa cake, decided it wasn't a cake, but it was in fact a luxury biscuit. And as such, it should contribute 20% of the consumer price in tax. Appalled at the prospect of paying the tax and delighted by the publicity that could be generated, McVitie's took the case to court and commissioned bake-off winner Francis Quinn to create the world's largest Jaffa cake to illustrate their case. It was 124 centimetres in diameter. It's a big Jaffa cake. A judge would decide if the Jaffa was a flat cake or a puffy biscuit. McVitie's lawyers argued the clue was in the name. The Jaffa cake was a cake. They said the ingredients were those of a cake, not a biscuit, and, in my favourite line of argument, they suggested that biscuits start hard and then go soft when they become stale, whereas it's the reverse for cakes and for Jaffa cakes. They start soft, they go hard. On the other side, Treasury lawyers argued that Jaffa cakes are the size of biscuits, are packaged like biscuits, and are stocked amongst the biscuits in the shop. If it looks like a biscuit and sounds like a biscuit. But in the end, McVitie's won the case, so the 2 billion Jaffa cakes made exclusively in Stockport each year remain free of VAT. Hurrah! For reference, HMRC consider the following to be non-luxury biscuits: chocolate chip cookies, chocolate's in chunks on the inside; bourbons, chocolate fondant is in the middle; gingerbread people with chocolate eyes, there's only a couple of dots, that's not luxurious; chocolate dip biscuits, chocolate is external but you add it yourself. Presumably having to work yourself means the luxury has disappeared. Maybe there's also a pragmatic acknowledgement that you could eat the biscuits and then drink the chocolate separately, and it would be impractical to pay the VAT each time you dunked a biscuit. Why a cake isn't deemed a luxury is beyond me. I mean, surely the whole reason Marie Antoinette upset the crowd so much when she said, "Let them eat cake," was the fact that they wanted the basics, bread. She suggested cake. That's luxurious. It's a mad world. We are flying over the hills of Galilee, heading towards the Sea of Galilee, to the northeast of which are the Golan Heights, recognised diplomatically around the world as part of Syria, but annexed by Israel during the Six-Day War in 1967. It was the Romans who absorbed Golan into Syria. Then Caligula gave it to Agrippa, assuming he was the man to get Agrippa of it. When Agrippa died, Claudius gave it to Agrippa II, the sequel, tightening his Agrippa. Ahead of us is Mount Arbel, down there on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Actually, a bit like with Jaffa Cakes, the Sea of Galilee is not really a sea at all. It's actually a freshwater lake. Its surface is roughly 210 metres below sea level, making it one of the lowest freshwater lakes on Earth, which also makes Mount Arbel seem more impressive. It is 181 metres above sea level, but 400 metres above the lake. Arbel's caves have been used as places of refuge for centuries, most famously in 39 BC, when Herod the Great attacked Jewish rebels who were hiding in them. In the same way that it felt strange flying over Mount Olympus, a sacred site for the ancient Greeks, it now feels strange flying over the Sea of Galilee, the setting for so many stories about Jesus. This is the water that he walked on, down there, through the clouds. It looks pretty still and calm today, but it was here that he calmed the storms. Winds can be funneled into this basin and make life on a boat dangerous. It was here, among the fishermen, that he recruited his first disciples. It was here that he preached his parables. It was on these banks he fed vast crowds with a few loaves and fishes. You can just use the word fish to describe more than one fish, but maybe fishes sounds better biblically and perhaps suggests more than one species of fish. The most common down there is the Galilee tilapia, which is a big fish, but you'd need more than a couple to feed all those people. Jesus' base during his ministry was Capernaum, at the north end of the lake, a couple of miles from where the River Jordan flows in. This was a trade route and fertile farming land, not as busy or intense or political as Jerusalem. He grew up in Nazareth, which is just 14 miles to our right. This is his land and his water. One day, Jesus is down there at the Sea of Galilee, where he sees fishermen have caught nothing after a night of fishing. He goes out to sea with them and tells them to put their nets into deeper water. They're sceptical. They know about fishing and they've already tried this, but they agree. When they pull up their nets, they are full of fish. Too many fish for the nets to cope with. "Follow me," Jesus said, "and I will make you fishers of men." And they did. They'd learnt to have faith. As the natural world became more knowable, science started providing narratives that challenged those of religion. A new struggle for authority was engaged. People had to decide if they had to choose between the sides, or was it possible to believe in both science and religion. By definition, miracles are difficult to have faith in. They violate the laws of science, so we have to decide, is this violation precisely why they are miracles, or are they lies? Can there be a middle ground? Are they exaggerations or metaphors? Do they have to be true to be useful to us? There is a version of the story of the feeding of the 5,000 by the Lake of Galilee in which the miracle is not that the laws of physics are broken, but that the laws of human nature are suspended. Faced with a huge hungry crowd late in the day, Jesus' friends urge him to send everyone off to nearby villages to find food. They explain that the only food for the whole company is a single packed lunch offered up by a small child who says that they'd be happy to share what they have. The followers point out that this is clearly not enough for so many people, but Jesus contradicts them, saying, "It will be enough. Watch." He stands up, calls out to the crowd, explaining the situation, holding up the offering made by the small child for them all to share. At this moment, shamed by the selflessness in contrast to the child's generosity, they bring forth from beneath their clothing all the food they have secretly brought with them, hoping not having to share. I like this version. A minister once told me, faith can't be a challenge to what we choose to believe or not, as though it were just a matter of opinion and an invitation to suspend our intelligence in order to accept certain supernatural phenomena. Faith, he said, is about what we choose to spend our days, how we choose to spend our days, and how we choose to order our priorities. I sometimes question whether doing this is really the best way to spend my days, or if I've got my priorities all wrong. Should I be at home, facing up to what has happened, and be there for Izzy? I suspect she has lost her faith in me. I don't know about whether the colour orange only got its name after it was promoted by William of Orange or William of Orange. William Yellowish Red wouldn't be quite such a good name, I don't think. Or coming from the kingdom of Yellowish Red. Down there, that's the River Jordan. It's an endorheic river, which means its waters don't reach the ocean. From the Sea of Galilee, 210 metres below sea level, it descends another 206 metres into the brine of the Dead Sea. Not that there's much water left. 95% of its waters are drawn on for use by Syria, Jordan and Israel. There are two bridges over the Jordan, border crossings between Israel and Jordan, one just before the Dead Sea, south of here, near Jericho, the other quite near here, near Beit Shean. In the Hebrew Bible, the children of Israel crossing the River Jordan from east to west after 40 years of exile marked a return to the Promised Land. Sadly, this bit of land has become so contested that you don't need to bother saying of the River Jordan. The West Bank will suffice. When pro-Palestinian protesters talk of the river and the sea, this is the river. In John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, there's a river that has to be crossed before pilgrims can enter the celestial city. That river is interpreted as Jordan, and the crossing as a metaphor for entering heaven. I'm intimidated by all this territory, all this history, but especially by Jerusalem, which is up ahead. The idea of it and the reality of it. I think bohemians might have bumped into flaneurs on the streets of Paris. I don't think it was possible to be both. The flaneur was, still is, a form of loafer, a stroller, an outsider, observer, a connoisseur of the streets who gains entertainment by observing life as it plays out before them. Inspired by the flaneur, Guy Debord started constructing the interpretation of a city seen not through a lens of capitalism, of function or of value, but by experience, emotion and imagination. To encapsulate this, he coined the term psychogeography. Ian Sinclair's psychogeographic writings have their epicentre where he lives, the East End of London. They treat history not as if it were sedimentary layers, one on top of the next, but as if they're all continually present and with us now, along with our own experiences and connections. By this measure, Jerusalem must be one of the most psychogeographically intense places on earth. Famously, that small patch of ground is sacred in 3 related religions. King Solomon built a temple as the first permanent resting place for the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the slabs on which God wrote the 10 Commandments for Moses at the top of Mount Sinai. That was destroyed by the Babylonians, and a replacement temple was built on the same site by Zerubbabel. This second temple was where Jesus worshipped, where Simeon and Anna waited before dying to meet him as a baby. Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace, according to thy word, for mine eyes have seen thy salvation. It's where his parents found him, aged 12, debating with the teachers, "Did you not know I would be in my Father's house?" Where he threw out the traders, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it a den of robbers." It's where he healed and taught and debated in the week leading up to his arrest, and where, at the moment of his death, behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. That temple was destroyed by the Roman Empire, and the remaining section of original giant stones, the Western Wall, is now the holiest site in the Jewish religion. When the British relinquished control of this land in 1948, the Jordanians beat the Israelis to it, and Jews didn't have access to the wall until the Six-Day War in 1967, at which point Jerusalem's Moroccan quarter was demolished to form the plaza that faces the wall. Christians refer to it as the Wailing Wall because of the sound of Jewish prayer at the site. Some traditions say you should approach the wall with bare feet. Others say that you should put your fingers between the gaps in the stones because that is holy space. Others disagree, saying that the truly holy space starts inside the temple where the stones finish. Everyone is pretty much agreed that writing on the wall or chipping bits off it for amulets may be a tradition but isn't a sustainable approach. Instead, written prayer notes are pushed into the cracks between the stones, more than 1 million every year. There's a third Jewish temple planned. This will be built when the Messiah returns, which could be a bricks and mortar job, but is more likely to be a metaphorical undertaking. I'm not sure which will be easier. For Muslims, this territory is holy for the twinned reasons of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, both key features in the highly significant night journey of the Prophet Mohammed, blessings be upon his name. The Prophet had endured his year of sorrow in which he lost both his wife and his uncle, who had acted as his protector and ally. And to make matters worse, he'd also been stoned in the street by children while trying to spread his message. Then one night, while sleeping in Mecca, the roof of his house was lifted off. He was picked up by the angel Gabriel. Gabriel opened up his chest, washed his inside, and poured in wisdom and faith before closing up his chest again. Next, the Prophet was brought a creature somewhere between a donkey and a mule called Burak. Burak means lightning. He wasn't keen on saddles and reins, but the angel explained that Muhammad was the most important person that could possibly be carried, and that this was God's will. This calmed the creature down a bit. Burak set off at lightning pace with Muhammad on its back and Gabriel as their guide. Their first stop was Medina, where Muhammad was told to pray and where he'll soon move after his night journey. Next they stopped at Mount Sinai, where Moses, who in Islam is called Muse, had spoken with God. Then they visited Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. Jesus in Islam is called Isa. In Islam, Isa is an important prophet, but not the Son of God. Approaching Jerusalem, the party stop off at the grave of Musa, where they talk with the dead prophet who is still praying. Finally, they arrive at Al-Aqsa, where Gabriel fishes a rock by pointing to it in order to give the prophet somewhere to tether Burak. Inside Al-Aqsa, which means furthest, 124,000 prophets are gathered. Gabriel gives the call to prayer, and a company of angels descend to stand behind the prophets. At this point, Muhammad instigates the practice of greeting the mosque with 2 prayers. Some discussion follows before Gabriel offers Muhammad a choice of wine and milk for refreshment. The prophet chooses milk, which Gabriel approves of. Then they walk the short distance from Al-Aqsa across to the noble rock, where a beautiful ladder gives Muhammad access to the first layer of the heavens. In the first layer of the heavens, his arrival has been much anticipated, and he's greeted with excitement by the dead prophets. Gabriel then knocks on the door to heaven and gains admission, whereupon they progress up through the layers of heaven, at each layer meeting a different prophet. First Adam, then Jesus and John the Baptist together, then Yusuf, also known as Joseph, after that Idris, also known as Enoch. On the 4th layer they meet Harun, also known as Aaron. Musa's older brother, then Moses, and finally, at the seventh sky, Ibrahim, aka Abraham. This structure is similar to that Dante will use much later in the final instalment of his Divine Comedy trilogy. A trilogy that started with a block-busting Inferno, followed by its largely ignored and somewhat dull sequel Purgatory, and concluding with an attempted feel-good finale, Paradise. Back in the seventh sky, the prophet encounters the furthest Lota tree, a sacred celestial tree beyond which no created being, even angels, can pass. It's the final limit of knowledge. There's definitely a joke to be made about having entered the furthest lottery but never winning anything. But that would be an inappropriate joke, which is why I will resist making it. Finally, beyond this tree, the prophet enters the presence of Allah. Afterwards, he remains very discreet about what was discussed between the two of them, simply saying, "He revealed to me what he revealed." But he did say that Allah shared with him the 50 obligatory prayers that should be performed every day. At this point, it said that Musa steps in to advise, presumably saying that 50 is an unrealistic number of prayers for humans to perform each day if they're going to get anything else done at all. So the 50 gets negotiated down to the 5 prayer times that I was reflecting on when I was flying out of Aleppo. After his time in heaven, the Prophet is returned to Al-Aqsa, where he finds Barak. They ride back to Mecca, where miraculously he's been away for such a small portion of the night that his friends mock him when he describes to them all that has happened. They get no idea about relativity. Initially, the Prophet and his followers prayed facing the Al-Aqsa mosque until halfway through a prayer session. A revelation came to him that they should be facing the Kaaba in Mecca, so they all changed directions. The mosque where this took place in Medina is now called the Mosque of the Two Qibla. Qibla meaning direction. When we get to Jerusalem, I'm going to try and fly close to the Temple Mount. We should be able to see the golden dome of the rock, which tops the beautiful blue tile building which covers the noble rock. Less easy to see will be the smaller silver dome of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is up against the western wall of the compound, which is the top of the Jewish western wall. We should be approaching the site on the Jordan where Jesus is said to have been baptized by John the Baptist. It's a World Heritage Site. In the Katara Hills, the hermits have chiselled out tiny caves with 2 chambers, one for living in and the other for praying. I've started to quite envy the hermit's life. I think that's probably what I'm doing up here. Sylvia is my aluminium cave. People are still keen to be baptised in the Jordan here, but to do so they have to have faith that they'll get some holy protection from the water's pollution. The Jordan is a shadow of the river it once was, diverted and polluted with the reduced flow. Solving its problems would require international collaboration, which is in short supply round here at the moment. The Baptists don't believe in infant baptism. They believe that people have to believe before they're baptised, which makes sense unless you believe baptism is a form of holy insurance policy, in which case taking it out for your kids on their behalf pretty soon after they're born makes a lot of sense. The Baptists are more committed to baptism than most, which is on brand. When they're baptised, they have to go right under total immersion. And I understand this. If a ritual is too lightweight, then it won't be memorable enough to do its job. Why just dribble a bit of water on someone's head if you can push them right under? Then it's easier for them to have faith that something significant has happened to them. For them, going under represents not just being washed clean of sin, but symbolically enacting Christ's journey from life through death to life again. This might all seem a bit much, which is roughly what the established Church of England thought. English separatists and other religious dissenters faced persecution and restrictions at the start of the 17th century in England, which is why they fled to the Netherlands and later crossed the Atlantic. I remember a trip to the Netherlands that me and Izzy made when we were first together. It was a nice, easy place to get to. We went to Rotterdam and Leiden. There was an exhibition in one of the churches in Leiden about the Puritans, later the Pilgrims. They lived in the area nearby. They worked as weavers, hat makers and printers. They secretly printed religious books that were prohibited in England and smuggled copies back across the North Sea. After a few years they left Leiden for America in search of a permanent home where they would be free to worship in the way that they chose. We're going to swing a right now, heading towards Jerusalem. That over to our left is the Dead Sea. And down there ahead of us, the walled city of Jericho. It was the first place that the returning children of Israel encountered, having crossed the River Jordan. Of all the stories of sieges we've encountered on our adventure, Joshua's solution to the problem of Jericho was probably the most elegant. Following instructions from his God, he marched everyone around the walls once a day for 6 days with priests blowing trumpets. Then, on the 7th day, everyone slogged around 7 times with the people shouting, and All that combined compromised the city's walls, which came a tumbling down. Joshua was a man full of faith. Mahalia Jackson's telling of the story is the definitive version. Remember those walls I built? Well, baby, they're tumbling down. They didn't even put up a fight. They didn't even make a sound. I found a way to let you in, but I never really had a doubt. Standing in the light of your halo. That wasn't Mahalia Jackson, that was Beyonce Knowles. Beyonce Knowles with songwriters Ryan Tedder and Evan Bogart. Contemporary dance interpretation by Sarah and me, Reggie. Classic. Liking a band doesn't necessarily mean you own a load of their records and listen to their music all the time. The reverse can also be true. Due to historical factors, there are some bands who I no longer care much for, but anyone looking at my record collection must assume I love. That is before my record collection melted away. These losses, small and large, hit you repeatedly and unpredictably. These days it seems quite hard to actually own music unless you can afford both the cost and the room space for the newly revived interest in vinyl. Oh, near here, by the way, is the Mount of Temptation, where Jesus was tempted in the wilderness. If you drew a graph with love to hate on one axis and no evidence to loads of evidence on the other axis, a silver Mount Zion would be at the extreme bottom left. I absolutely love them, but there's almost no evidence of this fact. A silver Mount Zion were a fragment of the band Godspeed You Black Emperor. My love for them hinges in part on their album titles. Where is the Tyrannosaurus Rex? My people were fair and had sky in their hair, ellipsis, but now they're content to wear stars on their brows. That was, is, and always will be terrible and pretentious. He has left us alone, but shafts of light sometimes grace the corners of our rooms. Ellipsis is a fantastic title. Both of those are long and deploy an ellipsis, but beyond that, there's no comparison. Prophets, seers and sages, the angels of the ages, terrible. Born into trouble as the sparks fly upward, brilliant. Zinc alloy and the hidden riders of tomorrow, self-parody surely. This is our punk rock, the rusted satellites gather and sing. I think it's and is actually a plus sign, but gather plus sing isn't quite as good as gather and sing. The closest the two bands get is with Unicorn, passable, and Horses in the Sky, fine, going on, quite nice, going on, lovely. The Silver Mount Zion and Godspeed are from Montreal. I haven't been there. Maybe I'll visit on this trip. Zion can refer to a hill in Jerusalem or just outside the city walls, or the city or the nation of Israel, hence Zionist. Mount Zion is supposed to be the room of the Last Supper. This landscape covers so much. He who would true valour see, let him come hither. One here will constant be. Come wind, come weather, there's no discouragement shall make him once relent. His first avowed intent, to be a pilgrim. Whoso beset him round with dismal stories do but themselves confound, his strength the more is. No lion can him fright, he'll with a giant fight, but he will have a right to be a pilgrim. Hobgoblin nor foul fiend can daunt his spirit. He knows that at the end he'll life inherit, then fancies fly away, he'll fear not what men say, he'll labour night and day to be a pilgrim. Not sure if I'm a pilgrim or just running away. A pilgrim, I think, is going towards something, has an aim. I don't know what mine is yet. I haven't really faced terrible wind and weather. It's been remarkably consistent. I have been frightened. I have been discouraged. I have been hit over the back of the head. But I don't think I have a choice but to continue night and day. Pandora's box, the forbidden fruit. It's the same story. The original sin, the point of no return, mining coal, discovering oil, the atom bomb, artificial intelligence. You're never closing that lid. In his book Sapiens, the Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari describes a brief history of humankind, and reflecting back on it, his opinion seems to be that we were doomed from the moment that we spotted that grains of cereal that we dropped grew the next year where we dropped them. From that, we learned that we could exercise a gearing mechanism on nature. We could generate surplus. We needed fewer of us working to feed everyone. We had spare capacity. We could do other things with our time. And in Birmingham and the West Midlands, we proudly claimed the Industrial Revolution as our child, and all that spewed from that. Here I am, burning off my 100-octane low-lead aviation gasoline, feeling terrible about it, but pressing on anyway, leaving the future in the lap of the gods, a plurality of gods, a diffusion of responsibility. We've flown over their mountain and we know that they're heartless, venal, vengeful, amoral sociopaths. It's not in God's lap, because at this point we pull our napkins over our heads. In the heart of the earthquake, we pull a pillow over our heads. It's too complicated to look at. It's too big to comprehend. We're too far gone to do this on our own. Cain slew Abel and the ball was rolling, tit for tat, eye for eye. We're taught to take energy out, but we're putting energy in, because they will slap the other cheek harder than the first. Unto the 100,000th generation, if we get that far. The true tragedy is that we have all the tools, everything that's required, the intelligence, the curiosity, the energy and drive, the imagination and finesse and boldness, even in the right conditions, the compassion, the empathy, the love, the generosity to make it right. When it comes down to it, maybe we're only here because when the push comes to the shove, we'll escalate from the push and the shove to the boot in the face and the knee on the neck. Each new technology ushers in a new opportunity to kill, to wound, to maim, to degrade, to exploit and destroy. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Couldn't be more simple, or it seems more impossible. When I returned to Miriam with a bleeding head, I didn't try to kiss her. She welcomed me back with a surprise start. I don't know if she was happy to see me back or not, but she gave me a smile of comfort. She sat me down. She patched me up with tenderness, like someone who cares for me. I could have cried, and I didn't. I could have kissed her, and I didn't, and both of those things are good. That is a sin I've not committed. An undoable thing not done. Well done, Reggie. Think like a stoic. Things could be worse. here, everything is peaceful. Earthly cares have fallen away. We're detached, isolated, inoculated. The view from up here is skewed. So much of that down there should be ruins. I know that. I follow the news. So much of that should be ruins. Is this the past that we're looking at down there now? Or the future? Or a fantasy? Sometimes we can't believe our eyes. Sometimes it's easier not to believe our eyes. If we're not living it, how can we feel it? There's a hologram future floated for us to invest in. An initial public offer. Whose land is this? How far do you go back? Maybe this is how it should be. Down there now. Or maybe this is just the average of every other place. But this isn't an average. This place isn't average. No place is average. They named it Meat City. You can buy other things there, including lots of fruits and vegetables. It's just a normal supermarket. Except now it's rubble. Across from the hotel there's a pizza parlour, liberal with black olives and spicy in its fries, with the ice cold Coke cans spin English and Arabic script. Except now it's just rubble. Marla House serves thick slices of wonderful Black Forest gatto to customers sitting under a striped awning. Except now it's just rubble. In the diagnostics centre, staff wear white lab coats and latex gloves. There's nothing there now. The chemist store has a special offer on disinfectant, but it's gone completely. The Aldera Hotel has a view of the sea. Its waiting staff wear waistcoats and bow ties. Men, smartly dressed in suits and ties, queue to get in. The sea has not gone anywhere, but the hotel has. On the 9th of December in 2014 at 15:03, a pony pulls a flatboard trap with two chunky tyres. A girl and a boy ride with their dad. A clown with a multicoloured Mohican blows bubbles for a group of children sat on red function room chairs. An entertainer with a microphone organises children to form a conga line. It's just rubble here now. In a mosque, 4 or 5 men sit at 2 tables. The central chair is high-backed. One of the men has a small boy on his lap. At a white lectern, a bearded man in a bright green polo shirt and a baseball cap addresses the room strung with multicoloured bunting. Behind him and either side of the table, young boys in white hats and t-shirts sit cross-legged, facing an audience of men and girls. Later, boys proudly hold certificates up for the camera. They also carry thin white plastic bags bearing the image of a cartoon bear and the word welcome. Outside are women and a trampoline, pink candy floss on sticks, an arm wrestling contest replete with smiles and grimaces. Later, a young man vacuuming the carpet. Now all this is rubble. The University College of Science is cool cream rendered, with neatly tended gardens well watered. 6 single flights of stairs rise from the pavement to a plaza, and from here a single flight of stairs funnels students under a portico into the main building. Now all this is rubble. White horses circle in a sandy enclosure by the beach. A long rein marks a radius in the riding club. Headband, a baseball cap, a crash helmet. Anxious riders walking the course before a race. Later jumping, the rider in jobbers and smart jacket. The horse with red caps on its ears, a fancy dress Lucifer. Under the slats of a pagoda on wooden raffia knotted chairs, a discussion in a big circle. Playing cards and cigarettes at a marble-top table in the night. A girl in a grey hijab takes a selfie with a friend in red, clutching a grinning little brother to her, with her arm around his neck, cheek to his hair. A scrawny cat watches the riders go round. Now all this is rubble. Water treatment works twice over. Now wreckage. Q Cafe, constructed from sterling board, feels like home in black letters over the hatch from which a cheery, mustachioed barista sells waffles with chocolate sauce, cookies cross-hatched with more chocolate sauce, fancy soft drink, colours stacked on top of each other, a fruit cocktail erupting from the mouth of the glass. Temporarily closed. No. Obliterated. A yellow VW Beetle parked up, one of the modern ones. A hand with clear pink nail varnish holds a lassie up to the setting sun. A blue cigarette packet with a Bic lighter balanced on top of it. Smoking kills. That's the least of your troubles. The barber shop that isn't. The Cordoba restaurant filled with helium balloons that say I love you. A table decorated with a heart in leaves, a single red rose at its centre. Gone. A group photograph. Women in a long curved front row, sat in chairs. Behind them, men standing. Everyone smiling at the official photographer, while we look on from the side. Where are they now? A man in a Donny Brasco brown coat with woolen collar, distressed jeans, black espadrilles. His left hand is half in his pocket. A brown bead bracelet around his wrist. His hair is close-cropped, looks slightly up and to his left at the camera. Where's he now? Smiling men wave flags of Qatar in an empty cafe. On the big screen there's the remnants of a football game. They've just won the Asian Cup, beating Japan. In 7 years, this place will be destroyed. A small hospital is now just rubble. The cemetery appears to have escaped unscathed. In truth, it has expanded. The Rafah crossing down there is the Gaza Strip's only land crossing into Egypt. Its supplies are to come in or people to leave. This is their only route. It's often closed. From up here, doesn't seem so bad, but down there are gates, barriers, inspection areas, buses, lorries and security checks. Unlike the people down there, I can fly over the wall that separates these two places. Wall is an understatement. It's a 14-kilometre security complex. Earthworks, walls, fences, checkpoints, surveillance posts, like the Berlin Wall. If people can't get over the 6-metre tall concrete wall, they might try to dig under it, so build a 6-metre wall under the ground. If you do get out of one of the most densely populated places into the world, you're then into the 23,000 square miles of the Sinai Desert, which is about the size of Latvia, twice the size of Belgium, an ocean of sound. My friends asked if my words would be answered, if my opinions should be vindicated, if what they called my lies should silence others. They think I mock, and no one makes me ashamed. They say this to me because I have said my beliefs are pure and I am clean in your eyes. They want God to speak, to open his lips against me. He would show me the secrets of wisdom, because wisdom has two sides. They say, know therefore that God excuses you of less than your iniquity deserves. They say, can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty? They're as high as heaven. What canst thou do? They're deeper than hell. What canst thou know? Their measure is longer than the earth and wider than the sea. If he cuts you off, imprisons you and gathers a court against you, who can hinder him? He knows vain men and deceivers. He recognizes wickedness also. Will he not then take note of it? For no more can a vain man become wise than a human be born from a wild ass. If thou prepare your heart and stretch out your hands towards him, if put sin that is in your hand far away from you, and let not wickedness dwell in your tents, then free of fault wilt thou lift up your face. Thou be steadfast and will not fear. You'll forget your troubles and misery, and remember it only as waters that have passed by. Your life will be brighter than the noonday. You will shine forth, you'll be as the morning, and you shall be secure, because there is hope. You look about you and you'll take your rest in safety. You'll lie down and none shall make you afraid. Many shall make court to your favour, but the eyes of the wicked shall fail, and they shall not escape. And their hope shall be as the giving up of the ghost. I'm heading to El Arish, which I hope is somewhere in the distance, in the desert somewhere, an oasis. Below me, a route people have been following for thousands of years. Pharaohs sent their armies this way. Alexander came through Gaza and into Egypt. Roman soldiers, merchants, pilgrims. Christians travelling towards the Holy Land. Muslims travelling in the opposite direction. Crusaders, Napoleon. The British during the Great War pushing across Sinai towards Palestine. Turks and Germans coming the other way, trying to seize the Suez Canal. I hope in El Arish I might find peace. I need to watch myself now. Someone knows my journey. Someone knows more about it than I do. The rings, the stolen sweet tin. I have to watch my back. I have to find Abdul in Sharm el-Sheikh. He might know. He must know. He must know. I think I might sleep in Sylvia again. Ensure that no one else sneaks in. At least I'll try to sleep. Sleep with one eye open. The kind of sleep that round here is probably a luxury. And not fill her up until just before I take off. The sun is setting, and the sun will rise again in the morning. Things will be where they're supposed to be. There'll be trees on the hillside. There'll be sheep in the fields. There'll be cars on the roads and clouds in the sky. Keep the faith. thank you for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that flight. It was passing over some troubled places. Thank you for watching. I think we had some new people watching tonight, so really delighted that you joined us tonight. We are back every Monday evening, continuing Reggie's journey around the world. And if you've missed some, you can catch up. There's only about 22 hours to catch up on, and you can watch all those on the Stan's Caf YouTube channel. The links are in the information on our Twitch page. Once again, thank you for all your lovely comments in the chat and for joining us, and I hope you'll join Reggie again next week when he flies on from El Arish to his next destination, where he tries to find Abdul to hand over those rings and to see what happened to that tin of sweets. Thank you again, everyone, and hope to see you next week.